All right, guys, so I'm going to try to do my best to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to install or do breadboard ends on a tabletop using the Festool Domino. This is the way I do it. It may not be the same as anybody else. Everybody kind of has their own way. This is the quickest and fastest way that I know how and prefer to do it. So stay tuned. And the step that I do is I get my table side, right side up in the clamps, and I find where exactly I want my breadboard end to be on the table. I always leave mine long, one, because it's easier to remove once you do all your marks, and two, it gives you a little bit of option to play with as far as finding the best looking grain to match the table. So up next, we're going to mark our locations for our dominoes. So what I did, I just simply used a fat hook rule from Woodpeckers, went ahead, and because every single one of my boards that runs this way is the same exact width, I can kind of use that as my marking gauge without being 100% accurate with a tape. So I just went through the center, and the center. And that should be plenty of support for a tabletop this size to connect the breadboard. Now that we have our locations for our dominoes marked, we're going to go ahead and loosen the clamps, pull the breadboards off, and go ahead and drill in our dominoes into the breadboard and into the tabletop. Now, when you're doing that, the center mortise, your center dowel, is going to be your only one that you domino on the tight setting. Every other domino is going to be loose. So if you had 20 more dominoes on this breadboard, all of those except for the center one is going to be on the loose setting, and just your center will be tight. That way you want the center to hold where it's at and the wood to be able to move in and out as it's supposed to. And as now it's time to cut the domino, I already have it set up. I decided to go with 10 by 100 millimeter dominoes. Probably a little long for what I need, but it's all I really had on hand. So that's what I'm gonna go with. So as far as the domino, I have this now set to 50, which means the domino will only plunge forward 50 millimeters into the table, 50 millimeters into the breadboard, which leaves you the perfect gap to put the 100 millimeter domino. The thickness of my material is 30 mil. I have my height set to 15 mil, which will put it directly in the center of the board. And I have my fence to 90 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and do my center domino first, because that is the only one that is on the tight setting. Always remember that. Your center pin has to be on tight, the rest are on loose. So I have it set up for that. We're gonna go ahead and make that cut, then I'll swap it over and I'll make the remaining cuts on the loose setting. Go ahead and swap to the loose setting and cut the rest of the dominoes on the breadboard. As you can see, I don't know if you can tell too well in the video, this is a smaller mortise. This is the tight setting center pin, and the rest are a little bit wider on the loose setting. So now we'll swap over and make these same cuts on the tabletop. All right, I'll switch back to the tight setting. Gonna go ahead and do my center pin first on the tabletop, swap over to the loose setting and cut the remaining dominoes. We got all our dominoes drilled. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our dominoes and we're going to glue them into the tabletop. You want those to be nice and solid in there, because while we wait for this glue to set up, we're going to go ahead and drill, using a 1/2-inch Forstner bit, a spot for our dowels to go through the breadboard. And when we reattach this dowel and tighten everything up to make our mark to drill through the domino, if we don't glue these tenons in, they'll want to come out. So we want those to stay in there. We're going to go ahead and glue them. And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and drill into our breadboard for our dowel pins. So you want to put you a nice healthy amount of glue in here. Use a brush or some kind of spreader to get it nice and spread around. When you push the domino in, it's gonna displace all that glue in the area that the domino doesn't take up. I just like to spread it around a little bit beforehand. Sorry. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and mark my locations to drill a hole through the breadboard into the domino. I know my dominoes are 50 millimeters long into the board, so I'll use this millimeter hook rule from Woodpeckers, and I'll mark 25 meters back, which is about halfway on the domino. All right, gonna go ahead and use the point on this drill bit to go ahead and get a starter hole and go ahead and drill these. Now that the glue in the tabletop dominoes is set up, we're going to go ahead and reattach our breadboard ends, snug them nice and tight, just like when we made our marks, and go ahead and make a mark with the same drill bit we used in the breadboards to mark our hole location in the dominoes. Now that we got our breadboards back on the dominoes in the tabletop, all tight just like it should be, we're going to go ahead and take our same Forstner bit, use that point to mark a hole in the domino. You may be asking why we don't just drill through right now. Well, because we're going to retake off these breadboard ends and actually move our hole location up just slightly. That way when you drive the dowel through, it actually pulls the breadboard to the tabletop and leaves it pinned on. If you just went straight down, you wouldn't have that tight connection of constantly pulling towards. So that's the main reason. Just like I said, you can see where our location was marked, even with the breadboard holes. We're going to move our bit just a hair forward, enough to draw that dowel and draw that breadboard in to the tabletop. So another thing we want to do with all of our dominoes except the center is elongate these holes to allow for wood movement. The center is the only thing that stays tight and precise throughout the whole project. See, by drilling that hole ever so slightly, that's going to force that dowel pin forward and pull the breadboard to the tabletop. Boards are back installed. We're going to get them tightened down to the position they should be in, and go ahead and cut us down some dowels out of this 1/2 inch by 36 inch oak dowel stock. So don't need to be long, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. We'll go ahead and put a bevel on it with a belt sander. That way it guides it in a little bit easier, and get these babies installed. So this is an old trick I found to basically take a Festool Rotex. I take 2 parallel clamps, clamp it in there, holds it pretty tight, acts as a makeshift vise. You can go ahead and turn it on, take your dowels, and just put a nice bevel on them. We got all of our dowels beveled. Now it's time to install them. Your center pin is the only one that gets completely glued in the hole, on the dowel, all that good stuff. The rest of them just get hammered in with a little bit of glue around the top to hold the dowel in place. That's it. The only one that gets glue everywhere is the center pin. So Now we'll let those sit, let the glue set up in here. They're not going anywhere. Let it set up around the tops, and we'll come back with a flush trim saw and cut them flush. All right, guys, it's actually a few days later since I started this tutorial and had quite a bit of a brain for it. I honestly forgot to finish showing you the steps. I was in such a hurry to get this project done. Where we left off, we had just drove the dowels in and the excess was sticking up. So as you can see now, I have gone through and trimmed that excess off, sanded it flush, and that pretty much completes the breadboards. And we got a nice looking table. So I'm gonna try to do some more of these. Any little thing I think that might help people. So yeah, keep a lookout for them, and hope you enjoyed this. Let me know how I did. If you do it a different way, let me know. It might be quicker than the way I do. So yeah, just here to help, and just remember, we're always learning. Doesn't matter if we're 30 years in or 3 days in. We learn something new every day. So hope this helps some people, and check back with you guys later.